And our session is another one of these ones where we've got three speakers doing, actually two speakers for this session, doing 10 minutes, and then we'll have a quick panel chat, and we'll have a bit more time for your questions for this one. And we do appreciate your input in this situation. This one is the transformative power of place, how urban regeneration can inspire a new change in cities. We are going to look at Auckland and Melbourne for this particular session. Kicking off things is often racing inside the Moonee Valley Racecourse redevelopment. You'll love this story. Doing this is Georgina Willis, who's the head of property for Moonee Valley Racing Club. She's been in the industry for 20 years. And joining her will be Alice Dore, Development Director from the Hamton Property Group. Alice is currently the Development Director at Hamton Property Group and responsible for the $2 billion Moonee Valley Racing Club redevelopment, and they of course are here to tell you more about it. So please make them welcome to the stage, ladies and gentlemen. You can steal my seat.
Well, thank you. It's an absolute pleasure to be up from Melbourne here today. Urban Developer obviously is a great support of our industry, and I'm very thrilled to be part of this session today and tell you a little bit about what we're doing at Moonee Valley Racing Club with the redevelopment. So I'll just kick off to first sort of explain Alice and myself and how we are sort of presenting on this session. So I'm actually representing the landowner, being Moonee Valley Racing Club. I'm the head of property development there. I have a development background, and I've come in to work with the club for their big visionary project through the well, maybe 10 years, it may be 15 years or 20, depending on the market conditions, but we'll keep moving forward, and we've got some exciting development to come. And Alice obviously works with our development partner, Hamton, who's in a JV with Hostplus, and they are the developers involved in the development delivery at Moonee Valley. So just to give you some background, pretty appropriate time, spring racing, we're all very excited. I'm actually leaving a lot of my colleagues back in Moonee Valley. We've got the Cox Plate running this Saturday, a very exciting time, a $4 million race. And yeah, there's a lot of hype in Melbourne, as you can appreciate, with Caulfield, Flemington and the like at the minute. So Moonee Valley Racing Club has a long history, obviously, in racing, commenced racing in 1883, has enjoyed a very rich and vibrant racing history, 40 hectares of land holdings, 6 kilometres northwest of the CBD, and located in the Moonee Ponds Activity Centre. One thing to point out with Moonee Valley, and a lot of these sites that are used for sporting uses, they don't generally get activated every day of the year, and I guess these are the considerations Moonee Valley had with looking at its land holdings and how it can deal with reinventing itself into the future. So as I said, 40 hectares of freehold land, so that's a pretty important point to make. It's not Crown land, it's not on the Heritage Register either, which is of benefit, and it gives you a great perspective of the opportunity there in that plan. So the Racing Club, as you can appreciate, is a not-for-profit. It's asset-rich with its land holdings, but as far as cash flow, it's limited. It reinvests through the racing, and it's time that urban renewal happens because of the prosperity of the future of Moonee Valley and racing and what it's there, what its main focus is. So key ingredients of urban renewal: racing infrastructure. I don't know if anyone's been to Moonee Valley. I can definitely say it's pretty tired. The infrastructure's very old, it's dilapidated, and it's time. So it's a real opportunity for the future. So really, we're trying to create prosperity, and I think with large landowners being institutional or government, not-for-profit, I think this is a real focus of how we can use our land better to get outcomes for delivering development, and particularly housing in key areas. So redevelopment considerations, obviously it's your typical mix. you've got planning that you've got to conform with, and it's about getting the balance. So there is heritage controls over the site, that has to be balanced in. You've got to look at, your planning policies and your amendments and how that plays forward. This is not a site that's going to happen in 12 months, 18 months, 2 years. This is going to be a long project. And with urban renewal at that scale, you've always got to be conscious of the planning environment, about controls that will come forward. So it's really important to be, aware, be involved in, a lot of planning discussions to get the best outcome for your land and your site. So social is also a consideration, the place, what we're creating, what it represents with racing, the infrastructure. So it's a really important consideration as a large landowner and, to being a good, a corporate body with regards to providing the necessary infrastructure with development. And one thing I will note, which I think is really important, is we can't underestimate our political environment today or for some time. Particularly with urban renewal, I've been involved in many really key projects, and the political landscape is so important. If there's a change of government, it can really derail a project. So politically, this is something that the club really looked at closely to align itself to work through issues moving forward. So, take me on to the next stage. So what Moonee Valley did, it realised the opportunity, it had a lot of consultants involved, and then it was just decided it was time to go out to market to get a development partner. So this was an important process. As I mentioned before, Hamton and Host Plus as a JV were the successful proponents. The short list came down to Mirvac, Grocon, Hamton, Host Plus. So, it was a really high calibre of development groups coming forward, and the key objectives of the development agreement were really important to align values to get the outcome for the long project moving forward. So one thing the club was really looking for was the agility in the developer, the ability to understand the innovation and how that could be brought into the project through time, the ability to deliver diversity, and the ability to work with the market forces. So they were really key objectives to choose our development partners. And I've just outlined there, the things that the club really was looking at. We were very keen on the public realm, and that was being delivered in that space. Another really important note is, we were operating with racing. There was areas of land that wasn't specifically being used for racing, and those areas are being developed as we speak. And then we'll move forward with the main infrastructure, the grandstand and the track and the like, and it's all about integrating so operations can move forward. And one of the key, the final items there with the assets about creating opportunity for the club with retaining some of its assets to enable that financial stability moving forward. So there are a lot of considerations that we're having ongoing with our development decisions. So I'm just taking you now to the projects that the club is driving themselves. So we've got our development partner who I've just spoken about, and they've obviously got the development parcel, which Alice will take you through in their design response. But we, as the club, are delivering its own projects with regards to racing infrastructure. So again, the old grandstand is very old, dilapidated. It's time that it be, demolished effectively, full of asbestos. It's not fit for purpose anymore. So the new grandstand will be delivered. It's a state-of-the-art grandstand designed by Cox Architecture. They are in the detailed design process. We're looking to demolish the old grandstand at the end of 2024, and there'll be approximately about 18 months that we're offline. So there'll be one racing season that we will hold our race meets at other racetracks, enabling us to deliver the grandstand of some 30,000 square metres. So these are just some visuals there of what's to come and the perspectives there. Another interesting project that the club is delivering is the infield. So as you can appreciate, 40 hectares of land, the infield makes up for about 18 hectares of green space. At the moment, that land is closed off, not available for anyone to use. In some areas, the grass doesn't grow very well. In the middle, it's not a nice sort of outlook. So that's going to be completely activated. When the race meets are on, that'll obviously be closed off. But as I said, it's about 28, 30 days a year. So for the rest of the year, it will be opened up for events, community usage. You can see that we're proposing a playground. There'll be opportunity there for farmers markets, moonlight cinemas. So we're looking at a whole range of events that we can open up to the community to make of use and benefit that whole catchment area. Let's not forget we're 6 kilometres from the city, so it really just makes sense with repurposing land holdings at this scale. And the last project I will just touch on is the Tote Cafe. So the Tote building is an old heritage building that's got a control, and we're refurbishing that and bringing it back to life. And what we're doing with our development partners there is delivering the 5,000 square metres of open space that's required under the planning control, and the park that will sit with, the Tote building that will sit within it. And what we've decided to do for the purpose of getting the front of the precinct moving and for people in our community and our stakeholders to see that it's all happening, we're bringing that forward. So that's actually about to start after the Cox Plate this year, and the redevelopment activity is ready for the running of the Cox Plate next year. So that's a really important, I guess, decision by the development team that we're going to bring that forward to demonstrate the new face of Moonee Valley and the redevelopment activities that are happening, and how, what's more to come in the years moving forward. So that's that for me. I'll pass on to Alice to talk through the development response.
Thanks, Georgia.
You're right.
Sorry. Thank you. Thanks, Georgia. It's great to be here today to present our story about Moonee Valley and our approach to visioning, community engagements and the benefits of an integrated master plan. At Hamton, we are true believers in the time spent researching, gathering facts and listening to what people want before we put pen to paper. We understand the enormity of our responsibility to transform one of Australia's largest urban infill sites into an exciting, life-changing neighbourhood, a workplace, a park, a street, a home. The importance of creating a true vision which pushes the boundaries and challenges the norm, the status quo, the fundamentals, will directly attribute to a quality outcome. The vision process and community engagement. Some might say we're a little crazy, but we decided to do these together. We got together over 30 different experts from around the world, locals, community members, residents, the council, and we asked them what they wanted, what they didn't want, what was missing, the good, the bad, the ugly. We did this over 3 days and we took the time. At the same time, we undertook a comprehensive community engagement process where again we met with hundreds of people. I personally have had cups of tea with over 160 people, I'm counting. We met neighbours, we listened, we met the protagonists, and that we learnt that much of the community was uninformed. So after we had completed our vision process and community engagement, we had gathered facts, opinions, ideas, wants and needs. We then had to decide how to distill this information and transform this 40-hectare island site into a thriving neighbourhood. How did we do this? We listed all the wants, all the gaps, and mixed it in with the development essentials to create a wish list. And for each wish on the list, we found a solution. We sourced it, we formed it, we problem solved. These key ingredients are brought together in one unique, fully integrated outcome, a neighbourhood within a park. A neighbourhood within a park is our vision, and it's a collective vision, and it is aspirational and informed. But a neighbourhood in a park is not a new concept. Victoria is the garden state. It is therefore no surprise that parks and gardens underpin the richness of our city. However, Melbourne has lost almost 2,000 hectares of open space and tree cover in the past year as suburban backyards are cleared for new housing. Academics at the University of Melbourne and Tasmania examined 2.2 million messages on Twitter and found that tweets made from parks had more positive content, less negativity than tweets made from built-up areas. More than 40 years of research shows that experiences linked to nature have remarkable health benefits, both mental and physical health benefits. By considering all of these factors, we were compelled to transform an underutilised urban infill site into an expansive urban parkland. Walkability is key to our master plan. We want people to walk across the 40 hectares. We want people to engage. We want people to come across to move through. Our design and the ease of walking through the master plan and into the existing community is fundamental. This is underpinned by our materiality choices and our signage choices to make it pedestrian friendly. We want to change people's behaviour and people to choose to walk, not drive. Walking enables connections. Connections create a sense of belonging. I'm now going to take you through a couple of slides about our project to give you a flavour of where Moonee Valley Park is positioned. Quality amenity is fundamental. A thriving neighbourhood requires day to night activation, small intimate spaces to enjoy a coffee, and open larger spaces. But what we've found is movable furniture to capture the sun and to allow crowds to increase or decrease organically is inherent to creating a sense of place. Local, not global, is to coin a phrase from Rothy Lohman. More people want to know their barista and where their bread is sourced from. This does not mean we cannot take ideas from overseas. However, we need to balance these ideas and ask ourselves, because it's a great idea overseas, will it work here with the same experience due to the locality, the climate, or the consumer? Our first residential stage is Glenara Walk Homes. This is 67 homes and terraces. In listening to what the locals wanted, we identified a gap. There were no or little quality modern homes in the area. We partnered with Rothy Lohman to reinvent the grander Victorian terrace from years gone by from Melbourne and Moonee Ponds' history, resulting in a design that is not ostentatious or overt, but rather restrained and considered. Natural ventilation and light, coupled with some of the smaller choices like the quality of the tap and the customisation, which people touch over 1,000 times a day, are very important to creating a sense of belonging. Importantly, it is our interiors and exteriors, as well as our landscape architect, that pull this all together. The inside of a space and the external space are just as important as each other. To close out, ultimately, as developers, we are creators. And if we want to do our job well, we need to listen, we need to be open to feedback, challenge ourselves in our way of thinking, lift the benchmark, embrace change, and then we'll be proud of what we have created. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgina and Alice, for that presentation. Moving on to New Zealand. Have we got anyone who's come over from New Zealand? No. Oh, yes. Thank you. Welcome. Oh, that's great. Good to have you here. Oh, another one here. Welcome as well. I love the place. Fantastic. I was there. I've been working there a bit, and one of my favourite stories in the newspaper, and I think it was page 2 of the newspaper, was that when they had a heat wave in Auckland, they had 3 days of 26 degrees in a row, and there was concerns about the prisoners in the jail getting overheated. So they sent them down to get some paddle pops for all the prisoners, but the wardens didn't want to give the paddle pops to the filthy crims, and so they've got 3,000 paddle pops sitting in the freezers in Auckland jail. Don't know what to do with them. Great country. Friendliest place in the world. This case study is not about paddle pops, it's about a vision for a modern Auckland inside ICD's Properties, 65 Federal Street. Matthew Khoo is going to tell us all about this. He's the Managing Director of ICD Property, a Melbourne-based property developer. Matthew has long been a leading voice in real estate advisory and property development finance. Matt, along with ICD Property, strive to constantly set new benchmarks for design excellence and quality of life. Please make him welcome to the stage, ladies and gentlemen.
Tim's New Zealand accent was not bad, but I'll leave that part to him. Judging by the response from the crowd, I can pretty much say anything I want, and no one's really going to know what I'm talking about, so that's great. My name is Matt Khoo. I'm the Managing Director of a development company based out of Melbourne called ICD Property. Just a quick overview, spiel about us. ICD founded in 2009. Since then, we've delivered a touch over 1,000 residences, as well as retail, commercial, and public spaces. Our current pipeline is circa $2 billion of mixed-use projects across 5 states and 2 countries, Australia and New Zealand. ICD's vision is to develop buildings that stand the test of time by enhancing the cities, the communities, and the occupants that we develop for. And it's, that's all right, skip the slide. So what I'm really here to talk about is our first foray into Auckland. Started last year, we made the strategic decision to head into New Zealand, and we were fortunate enough to pick up a site which was being divested by Sky City Casino, which is this site here, a car park site at 65 to 71 Federal Street. And to give you some context, it sits circa 100 meters from the Sky City and Auckland Tower. So very central within the Auckland CBD. What drew us to the site was its premium location, only 100 meters from the tower. We also felt that it was underutilized, providing the ideal opportunity for us to deliver a landmark project and transform the city and the community around it. The real game changer for us, and I guess, which gives me something, I guess, to talk about with the transformative power of place, was that we decided to conduct a proactive design competition. And I got to give a fair bit of credit to Bueller International, who you'll hear Adeline speak of, I think, in the next session. We saw them conduct a design competition within the Melbourne context, and were inspired and felt that that really allowed for the best, some of the best designers to come together and put forward ideas to get the best outcome. And ultimately, Woods Bagot was the winning architect, and I think I've got a video. So I thought I'd cheat a little bit and do a video, but also because my wife says I'm pretty boring to listen to, so to listen to me for 10 minutes is, I'm saving you guys from that. If this works. Yes.
New Zealand has got some extraordinary natural landscape in terms of geology and fauna, and that has been our place of inspiration to look at something that captures people's imagination and is something that is very enduring for the skyline of Auckland.
It was an inspired choice by ICD to choose a design competition because they used their international experience to bring to the market. They identified a gap where the rules were getting in the way of good design, and they've basically challenged these world-class architects who've all partnered with local architects to lift the game here in Auckland.
Auckland has a lot going for it already, but there's so much more potential. And for us, we're all about enhancing the landscape and the communities that we build within, and we felt that we could really make a difference.
And they were very clear that they didn't think the building should go higher than the viewing platform of the Sky Tower, which was different to all the other submissions, I have to say. And so we had a good discussion about that, what it is to be a good neighbour.
It's a very simple object that comes down to ground. It splits into 2 podiums as well, and at its long distance scale, what it does for the skyline and how it complements the existing one and sets a new direction in terms of living, hospitality within Auckland.
The facade itself is very crystalline and simplistic in its design, but sophisticated and timeless.
The most elegant thing that Wood Bagot actually did was address the street. They had a very urban response to Federal Street. they created a very active urban people space there and populated it with everyday activities like eating, shopping, a market type environment.
What it does at the lower levels to the public, where the public interface is. So we see it as a true destination for the people of Auckland and tourists as well to come to this place.
It's really going to bring a greater focus on Auckland itself as a destination internationally for business, for tourism. This is really how you extract great design for a city and for its people. And this is how you design a good city.
Don't know about you, but I hate when I hear myself speaking. I think the video sums it up pretty well, but sort of circling back on our vision for the project and how the design responds to this in terms of its enhancement to the city, the community, and the occupants. Just a few sort of points. In terms of enhancing the city, it stands here providing a world-class design whilst integrating with its surroundings in terms of the size, the shape, the materiality. A few things to note. The way it was thought of is as a feminine shape complementing the Auckland Sky City's masculine presence. In terms of the materiality, it takes inspiration from the natural geology of the region and its indigenous flora and fauna. We gave a bit of a brief to the architects and used policy in part of that context. And it was very interesting that Woods turned it on its head and said, look, we'd rather look at best practice and hope that the government comes along on a ride with us, and that includes things like setting the height to partner the Sky City Tower, suitable for today, but also relevant for tomorrow, anticipating that the skyline is eventually going to build up around it. And considering the context and the aspect in relation to the viewing tower and the ability to still maintain that to the waterfront. Design-wise, and you probably got an idea of it from the previous photo, is it sits on a corner site. And rather than using the typical setbacks, Woods actually decided to pull the building out towards the corner, which gave better private amenity to the adjacent properties. And in terms of its shape from a bird's eye view, the floor plates were optimized for hotel and residential use in terms of efficiency, but also efficient from a construction costs point of view, meaning we can deliver the market a more affordable product. In a greater context of, in terms of transforming the city more broadly, being able to provide the Auckland City with this concept of doing a developer-led design competition encourages other developers to also look to that for the best responses. The repositioning of an obsolete use within the CBD and future-proofing it even further with adaptive use of the car parking within the building is another way. And then also encouraging change within the construction industry, which is forming from a monopoly type of situation within the Auckland construction industry and seeing more entrance into the market and technologies as well. From a community fabric perspective, what is really stands out about this design is the way in which it is inclusive of the public forum. And working with the council during the design competition was looking to pedestrianise that part of the CBD. Things that you won't see in this are things like an art gallery, which would allow for local artists to present their pieces to the public, as well as a Oculus that allows a viewing up to the Sky City Tower and giving it presence. And lastly, enhancing the lives of our occupants. The high density allows the various complementary uses to exist, creating a vertical community. The shared economy also means that facilities such as a pool, a gym, the food market downstairs are cheaper to own and run. And sort of just, I guess, summating everything in terms of the topic for today, transforming the city with reference to this project, having a clear vision and desire to enhance the city, putting the best creative minds together to deliver the best outcomes, and having an open-minded government to see past the rigid frameworks and policies to enable good development to occur in a profitable and quick manner. Thanks.
Thank you, Matthew. I'll just ask one question. You said before that your wife said you're boring. Why do you take a shit, mate? Seriously. Come on, buddy.
Am I meant to ask
I
that?
thought you were great. No. Wasn't he great, ladies and gentlemen? We want him to feel good about himself. That's what we're here. It's positive
she's
stories.
it out of me,
It's
so
not
don't
true,
worry
is it?
about
You just made that up as an excuse. Georgina, let's
Georgia.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's all right.
I suppose it's a situation, if it didn't happen, it was sink or swim in this situation.
You're talking from the club's perspective? Yeah. Absolutely. Like, I think large land holdings around inner cities, they have to some extent a responsibility, and they really need to reinvest and look at opportunities to do so to move forward. And let's not forget, with taxes and charges and the rest of it, you really need to redevelop to be able to be financially viable and use your land to its best ability in order to move forward into the future. Because if you don't, land is precious. 6 kilometres from the city, the club had a decision to make.
I mean, why was it locked away from the community for so long?
Well, I think there's a whole lot of issues that come in with that. Like, obviously, we're in a situation now from a public liability perspective. Let's not forget, you open up your land holdings to, the public and the community, and suddenly as a landowner, you're the responsible party. So you've really got to look at how you can structure, that in the sense of getting your land working for you. And I think, the main focus is racing operations. So, the tracks, I won't go into detail, I've learned a lot of recent times, but it takes a lot to get a track in peak condition. And you don't want people running all over it.
Yes.
And riding their bikes and the rest of it. So, you've got to look at the main purpose of what the land's being used for. But I think in industry speak, we call it temporal uses, temporal traffic uses. With car parking, don't just use it from 9 to 5. What happens with that car parking after hours? How can we better use our land to service a mix of uses in our inner areas?
I mean, how often is it used throughout the year, that amount of space?
At the moment, we've got 28 race meets a year, and most of that's night racing. So if you look at that, a lot of the time it's sitting there underutilised, and that's, that we can do better.
Was there a question about whether or not it should be kept? Full stop?
Well, I just think, you look at clubs particularly, there's a lot of football clubs around Melbourne too that, they have to look at their viability as a club moving forward, and they have to start diversifying a little bit and reinvesting. And I think that's exactly the situation. It's about how you look at the opportunity, you look at what your main purpose is, but how you can get the balance there and, be self-sufficient into the future. You don't want to be in a situation where government flies in and says, look, you can't survive anymore, we're taking this from you. So I think it's about, putting things into perspective and being proactive in how you can get a win-win for all stakeholders.
Alice, was there a whole bunch of fuddy-duddies in that you had to deal with? All I can think of is all those old blokes there with the, who don't like change, dealing with that.
Don't like change. And I think Moonee Ponds is unique as a suburb in that people stay there for a very long time in their life. It's not like other suburbs in Melbourne where it's more transitional. So most people I've met have been in their homes and they're not necessarily that old for 20, 30 years. So not only are they fearful of change in their street, but as a neighbourhood, Puckle Street, it's on its way to being gentrified, the main street, but it's a bit like walking down a country town. There's still a reject shop. 6 k's from the city, it's sort of, it's a dichotomy. You've got this great suburb rich in history. You've got Moonee Valley Racecourse with all this land untapped. So for us, it's the perfect opportunity. How do we gentrify? How do we listen at the same time? Because those people want change too. They want to use the infield. They want better connections. So how do we address their needs, but also create something new and bring more people in and make it more dynamic?
What about, obviously, there's two things going on with racing at the moment. There's some excitement about the Spring Racing Carnival, and then there's a horrific
Thought you might ask that question.
series on the ABC. How have you responded internally to that news?
Look, I think, it's funny that you say that because you put it into perspective. I'm not trying to deviate from the question, but, the 7:30 report not long ago actually recapped on the horse racing industry. And it also just, in the same segment, talked about, the dismal status of the planned sales. So, we're in a situation where there's different industries, whether it's development industry, and we all know the media hype that's out there at the moment that's affecting our industry. But from a horse racing point of view, look, I'm from a development background. I've come into Moonee Valley from a development perspective, but from a horse racing perspective, I think you've got to, with media hype and coverage, you've got to look at the facts. And I think there's always going to be a weak link. I'm comfortable where the club's at, and there's a lot of great clubs in Melbourne. Victoria didn't get spoken of too much, which was, was good to hear. But it's also important that we put pressure back on industries to make sure everyone takes responsibility. So I think it was a really good report because I think, Victorian racing, New South Wales racing, Queensland racing, they have to take action, and I think that's a good thing. It's not dissimilar to, from a development point of view, with the better apartment design standards that got released in Melbourne. A lot of developers were, up in arms, how are we going to deal with this? But you know what? It took out all the shit out of the industry, and it cleaned it up, and it was necessary for the industry to move forward. And I think, with those kind of segments and what you hear in the media, it just, it entices people to take action, and I think, it's really important.
Yeah, hopefully we'll some change. Matthew, this is you use the term landmark building. What do you think that means?
Look, I guess one of our key values in the company is passion, and for us, what we want to be able to look at for each of our projects is that's made a difference. Made a difference to the landscape, and I think that's what most people connotate from in terms of a landmark, but how it also impacts the fabric of the society.
And how is the process of dealing with the lovely people in New Zealand?
It's been phenomenal, actually.
Yeah.
I won't talk to, I guess, the other states that we operate in, but just in terms of it's really refreshing when there is an openness to look outside of what the policies and the frameworks are that that are already existing, and they're existing for a reason. There's not sure if it's a bad rap for developers, but generally there's a negative connotation around the development industry in terms of overdevelopment or profiteering and that sort of stuff. But there's never really much focus on what good developers are doing. And I'll give him a little bit of a spiel here, but I caught up with Rob Pratterlin yesterday and talking about housing all Australians, and you know, he's you know, wanting to privatise the idea of dealing with the homelessness issue. And it was really surprising to see how many people within the industry are actually on board and helping with that, pro bono and all that. And it's about people, staff engagement, and people wanting to actually do good. And I think developers are no different to that. And to work with a government that is saying, yeah, look, I can actually see how you're going to improve the Auckland landscape, the precinct, and it's going to be a good product, then that's great.
Excellent. We've got time for one question. Or a statement. We'll take a statement. They normally think, well, I'm actually a builder by trade, and I've made something once. What do you reckon? I'll take that. Or does it? I can't say a bloody thing. I'm 100.
Hi, I have a question for Georgia. What led you to choose Hamton as your development partner? What were the key characteristics, particularly for this type of infill project?
Yeah, no, a very interesting question, and I'll put some context around it. I actually wasn't working at the club when the process was being run, but I was working in close proximity on another development, so the industry was following it because it was such a big project in Melbourne. But, you know, from the process that was run, it was very much, and I noted in my presentation, you know, it was about getting the right value proposition, and you know, there's all sorts of developers out there. I've had the fortunate opportunity in my career to work for smaller groups. I've also worked for government development, and I've also worked with the larger sort of institutional. So I think there was a conscious decision made by the club in its value proposition and the ability to have shared objectives that were very at that local level. I think, you know, the other proponents were very much very big machines, big groups, which were probably very set and rigid in their development process. And I think the club realised that having an agile development group that could work with them as a real partner over, and let's say, you know, we're talking 10, 15, you know, if the market conditions don't change, it could be 20 years. So I think they're really, you know, it's really important with development, with your stakeholders, to have a really united value proposition. And that was really what the outcome was with the choice of Hamton Host Plus.
Thank you very much. That was a great question. I appreciate that. And please thank Alice, Georgia and Matthew, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, guys.